Hi there and welcome to the Alt.Narrative podcast. I'm your empathetic and relentlessly curious host, Rich Harris. I've been a corporate marketer and sociology nerd for most of my 2 decades-long career, observing trends and patterns in human behavior on the internet. On this podcast, we will explore the impact of the digital world on humanity and modern-day social dynamics. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to check out the website at Alt.Narrative.com for more content. Hello everybody, welcome to the Alt.Narrative podcast. This is episode 6, and I will be reading from a transcript that was from an interview that Isaac Asimov had done in 1991. Basically, he was speaking to the idea of artificial intelligence, or AI, back then. And if you know me, you know that I love Isaac Asimov. I love everything that he's ever talked about, all the way back to the 50s and 60s. This guy was already recognizing patterns in behavior, technology potential, and how it would sort of weave itself into humanity and what that might look like. But he's also keenly aware that there's going to be problems as well. And this guy was talking about this stuff in the context of a lot of the movies we see now, but back in, like, again, the 50s and 60s. And I just always thought he was brilliant. And his books are pretty amazing, even though I have not read nearly as many as I should have. But anyway, without further ado, I'll get right to it. So Isaac Asimov, he gave this interview as part of the Vision of the Future series in the year 1991. This was his last major interview before he passed away in the following year in April of 1992. He spoke to AI, artificial intelligence, and how it would truly free humans if we were ready for it. His idea to offload humans from doing things they were not good at and allow them to focus on the things they are good at resonates loudly today, but is also a highly debated topic in terms of where that line is drawn. So in this interview, Mr. Asimov articulates the premise that humans can be free to creatively think, create, and problem solve without the burden of the mundane tasks that the human brain is way overqualified to do. Isaac Asimov speaks to artificial intelligence in 1991. Perhaps the most revolutionary development in recent years has been that of the computer, because for the first time we've discovered a machine that can be a substitute, at least in part, for the human brain. Before that, there was just a matter of saving human muscles by using machinery to spare them from what human muscles couldn't do very well. Computers, they come in all sizes and they've been getting smaller and smaller. We've got these tiny little microchips now, and as a result, every industry, the government itself, tax collecting agencies, airplanes, everything depends on computers. We have personal computers in the home, and they are constantly getting cheaper, more versatile, capable of doing more things so that we can look into the future. Now, for the first time, humanity in general will be freed from all kinds of work that is really an insult to the complex human brain, work that requires no great thought, no great creativity. We can just leave all that to the computer, and we can leave to ourselves those things that computers cannot do. Such things as imagination, creativity, fantasy, intuition, problem solving, where we don't have to have the exact conditions and know exactly what's happening because we have an intuitive field for what the solution ought to be. No computer can do that, and we can save our own brains for that purpose. Artificial intelligence is a phrase that we use for any device that does things, which in the past we have associated only with human intelligence. For instance, if you have a machine that can alphabetize cards very rapidly, until recently only human beings could alphabetize cards. So in that case, you've got an example of artificial intelligence. Now, this does not necessarily mean that something that is artificially intelligent thinks quote-unquote precisely as a human being does. It may be a completely different kind of intelligence. The machines may specialize in certain, quote, mental activities, while human beings specialize in others. We humans do a great many things we're not good at. For instance, we're not really good at arithmetic. We need help. We need numbers. We need a pen and paper. We need devices. Well, the cheapest computer in the world can multiply and divide faster and more accurately than we can. That is its specialty. Our specialties as humans are different things, so that you end up not having artificial intelligence and natural intelligence as identical, but instead as two different things. Two different specializations, they work together. Each supplies the lack of the other, and then in cooperation, they can advance far more rapidly than either could by itself. Furthermore, computers are not just immobile things, because you can hook computers up to machinery and have the machines that spare human muscles also act in such a versatile way, that they seem to be thinking you will have artificial intelligence applied to machines. We call them robots in science fiction. You always think of robots as man-like metallic creatures, but actually any machine that's computerized is a robot. And we have industrial robots right now that don't look the least bit like human beings. And yet they do things that, until just a couple of decades ago, only human beings could do. And we're going to live in a future, perhaps, in which we will have personal robots as well. Robots that do look like human beings, and that replace for the first time what we used to call servants. And it will free us all for the first time. We're going to be free, really truly free, humanity as a whole. Now again, what's life going to be like if we're completely computerized and completely robotized? Well, there will be a lot of the side effects. Will there be difficulties? Undoubtedly. Will there be things that we won't like? Undoubtedly. But we've got to think about it now, so as to be prepared for possible unpleasantness and try to guard against it before it's too late. We always have to do that. It's like in the old days when the automobile was invented. It would have been so much better if we had built our cities with the automobile in mind, instead of building cities for a pre-automobile age, only to find that we can hardly find any place to put the automobiles or allow them to drive. This is the sort of thing we must avoid in the future. However, it's impossible to predict what that will be. That's one of the great excitements of science, that always there is the unexpected. Always there is something that no one thought of that completely revolutionizes our thoughts in this direction or that. It's a kind of excitement that keeps scientists going, I assure you. And if the population generally can be made to share in it, how much pleasure they will have. Again, we have no way of knowing how that will help us with our own technology. I mean, when we discovered the electron in 1895, it seemed to be just a scientific curiosity. A tiny little particle that was inside atoms, and nobody cared except a few scientists. Except, out of that came the great electronics industry. Without the electron, we wouldn't have radio, we wouldn't have television, we wouldn't have recording devices, we wouldn't have almost anything we now have and take for granted, and we don't know what further discoveries may tell us, not only about the universe, but about our own technology. That wraps it up for today's Alt.Narrative podcast episode. Thank you for listening, and please check us out online at Alt.Narrative.com for more content.